Hello and welcome. I am Captain Tom, and you are on board the Silverwind. So welcome aboard. We are joined by Wilson, who is our co-host and producer. He's also an intergalactic robot, and yeah, he's going to be over there doing his thing. So let's go ahead. We are going to go to Umbriel today. So let me go ahead and make sure we can make that happen. All right, Wilson, let's see if that works. Let's see. Yeah. So at the end, we're going to have some fun space news, but today we're going to be going over Genesis chapter 27. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's an interesting theme that we're going to talk about with it. So there's going to be a lot of drama, a lot of family drama. And besides that, we are, of course, first going to talk about where we're going to today is one of the moons of Uranus. And yeah, it should be it's actually really interesting, but there's not a lot of information we really have on it. So let me turn this music down here. Yes, let's see here. Dan Yoder, Silverwind, let's go. Absolutely. Welcome, Dan. And P. Johnson, ready, set, go. We got Julian in the house. Howdy to you, good sir. And yeah, let's see here. Where are we at? Okay, all right. Looks like we're coming in on it. Here. We can get me out of the way there. There we go. Ooh, always with that that very quick intro there, Wilson. Let's see here. Make sure we stay in one spot. There we go. Easy day. Okay, so a hunk of rock in space. What's so interesting about this thing? Well, got a few facts right here for you guys. So let's talk about it. And those very few facts are simply this is one of the darkest moons of Uranus. It is basically only reflects around like 18 or 16% sunlight from its surface. The really interesting thing about it is that no one knows why the surface is so dark. So the surface is very similar in to like that of our moon, right? But when you get this far out into space, things are generally covered with ice, and when it's covered with ice, it's generally a lot more reflective. And so there's kind of a mystery on like what darkened this moon to be like this. And then if you actually look, I'll bump the microphone. If you actually look up there in the very top left corner of that moon, there is this mysterious white ring. And that's once again another mystery. No one knows. This is a ring that's going to be about 90 miles round. It's so it's pretty big. No one knows why. It might have something to do with an impact, but you have all these other impacts on all these other craters. It's still dark. So yeah, just one of those things. It's very difficult to explain that this is just another piece of rock or ice that just kind of spiraled in here from everything else. We have ice caps. It's if you can have a circular ring ice cap, then you know what, still unique. But yeah, maybe it's just a little ring of ice there, which would also be wiser ring of ice. So maybe we'll get something out here one day. Maybe we'll get something that can kind of be an Umbriel clipper, right? But we'll see. It's pretty far out there. But yeah, just kind of an interesting thing. Dark, mysterious moon that is from one perspective, we take the perspective of the materialist worldview. All of these things came from the same place in the same movement, spiraling cloud of dust and gas, and then these things formed. Yet once again, we're finding that all of them are very, very different from one another, and they all have their own sense of personality and uniqueness. So from a theological perspective, you can simply say, well, you have a creative creator and just chose to make them different, right? So we have that right there as a fun little mystery. So maybe we'll, get NASA out there one day. Me and Wilson go check it out, but we don't have time for that because we got to get into our story. So let's see here. Yeah, I think we'll just jump right back over there. We'll have this in the background. So we'll have Wilson turn the ship around. And yeah, let's get to the reading room so we can continue our story in Genesis from Isaac to his descendants. So let's go ahead and we'll do that right now. Yeah. All right, so beautiful scene here. I mean, space is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's just so nice to be able to just get out here, hang out for a little while, and read some good stories, right? Some good universal stories that have laid the foundation for Western civilization and our culture at large. So definitely worth exploring, and this is definitely an important part of the story, as pretty much everything in Genesis is. So last week we talked about Isaac and how he had some adventures kind of in the area, dealing with kind of digging some wells, dealing with some conflict with his neighbors, and basically getting pushed, from one location to the next. He had a strong and large household. He definitely would have been seen as like a roving king kind of person. And he chose not to engage in conflict with people who challenged him in things when, they had no right to challenge him on those things, and essentially stealing property from him. And he chose to be peaceful with them. So those are good things we saw with Isaac. We saw early on, he had one of the same kind of little hiccups that Abraham had, where he, was afraid for his life and claimed that his wife was just his sister, to try and avoid anyone trying to kill him to take his wife. He got called out on this by a pagan king, another Abimelech. So there's a little bit of not synergy, but repetitive nature in that, right? History repeats itself. So there's that little flaw that he had, but with the rest of the story, he does pretty well. And there's one other thing as well. When it comes to his sons, in a previous chapter, it is mentioned that Isaac loved Esau, and then Rebekah loved Jacob, right? So we already have the foundation for, let's just say, a lot of drama in the household. When you have two different parents that have a different favorite child, just having a favorite child in general, we know that that's not a good way to run a household, but that's what they're doing here. So we get to see how that all unfolds. So and today we're also going to be talking a little bit about a concept. So we have a lot of people here in the Bible kind of doing their own thing and like following God at times and not following God at times. And yet the idea is that God has a will, he's in control, he has a plan, humans being able to make decisions and do their own thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up right here. Experimenting by putting text on the screen. So it's God's perfect will versus God's permissive will. And this idea is that, God would never tempt someone. God would never be associated with evil or something that is outside of himself, such as sin or anything like that. Yet God uses people's, sinful decisions or ungodly decisions to bring about things that are in his will. So is God causing those sinful things? Well, the Bible would say, no, he's not causing those things. So this is kind of an idea that helps us understand what this is, so God's will can't be, averted or undone, but at the same time, God gives and we choose to do things God doesn't want us to do. So basically that definition would be God's perfect will is the complete and mature will of God, while God's permissive will is what God allows people to do, even if it's not his first choice, right? So think of that as we talk about this story, because I feel like this story today, there's a lot of it, right? So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We can bring that up again if we need to. But just something to keep in mind here. So let's see. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to, I guess we'll just start it. Let me get to this scene right here. And we'll just start in verse 1 and see how far we're going to go down. Let's get to the top of my notes here. We'll just do the first 4 verses here. All right, you can follow along if you have your own Bible. If not, kick back, relax, grab a drink, some rich chocolate Ovaltine or something like that, and enjoy. All right, so chapter 27 reads, One day, when Isaac was old and turning blind, he called for Esau, his older son, and said, My son. Yes, father, Esau replied. I am an old man now, Isaac said, and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die. All right. So, okay, so we already have a couple interesting things to break down here. So we last chapter talking about Isaac and all these different things that he was up to. And then it goes to the next chapter and suddenly that's all over. Like now he's an old man, right? So it really kind of summarized, the dealings of Isaac's life a lot in one chapter. And then we're just kind of moving on now. So he's on his deathbed, but that doesn't mean, so he's either ill or something like that, or just he thinks he's going to die soon. He actually continues to live for another 40 plus years after this, but he believes that he's, close to dying. So he wants to basically get his affairs in order, pass on the blessings, which would have been essentially, naming the rights of the firstborn as taking control of the family and being that, the one to inherit everything. So very, very important business. And then previously, we have a prophecy from God to Rebecca that the oldest would serve the younger. So it's probably, safe to assume that Isaac is aware of that prophecy, because most likely Abraham at the time was still alive and maybe gave that prophecy to her. Perhaps God spoke directly to Rebecca. Either way, surely she would have shared this with Isaac. So he knows God's will is for Jacob to essentially get the rights of the firstborn, and yet he has a favorite, Esau, so he's kind of trying to do his own thing here, just focused on who his favorite kid is and not focused on, what it is that God has already pronounced that he wants to do here. So you already have that interesting thing happening. And Esau, of course, even though he sold his rights as a firstborn, he's willing to forget all of that and just, he's here for it. He's kind of described as this person who really chases after pleasures. He married a couple of the local Canaanite women, something that his parents didn't want him to do, and they caused a lot of problems at home for his parents. But despite this, he still is going to try and pass on this sacred legacy that in this covenant through that. And so there's a lot of red flags here. Now that Esau is at a point where he could benefit from those from that inheritance, the physical benefits, the authority, the political benefits, he's here for it now he cares about it because there's something for him to gain from it, not because he genuinely cares about God's covenant or anything like that. So with that, let's go ahead and go into the next section here. I think that pretty much covers it. Let me see. I think that's it on my notes here. So we'll read another little chunk here, go from 5 to 10, and see what happens here. See if everything goes the way that Isaac is and Esau think it's gonna go. So let's see. All right. So verse 5 starts with this. But Rebekah overheard what Isaac had to said to his son Esau. So when Esau left to hunt for wild game, she said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare me a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I will use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so he can eat it and bless you before he dies.'" All right. Ooh, okay. So we have Rebecca, who has her favorite, Jacob. She overhears the conversation that Isaac is going to pass the blessings to Esau. And so she's got to jump in, and she now has a plan to interfere here. Now, the title of this video is called Jacob the Trickster. Jacob is very much a trickster, and even though this is essentially his mother's idea, we'll read about how he responds to this. He's very much on board, right? He has some reservations about getting caught, but we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, it's so now we see, is Rebecca doing this because she remembered what it was that God had pronounced, how Jacob would rule over the firstborn, and that he should get the inheritance as a result of that? Or is she simply operating out of a human love and affection for, or favoritism for, Jacob over Esau? I guess the text doesn't really say, but I think that the idea here, we're leaning on the latter. because everyone in this story right now is kind of leaning on their own human wisdom and what it is they want to happen. Doesn't seem like anyone in the story right now is too concerned about God's will, right? So God has to deal with a messy situation. So let's see what happens with that. Let's just jump into, let's see here. I have some notes right here. Rebecca listening to them. She may have been spying. She may have not. It could have been something where she could have easily overheard. Depends on the layout of their home situation. And yeah, so let's go ahead. We're going to jump to the next section here, 11 through 17. All right, here we go, starting at 11. But look, Jacob replied to Rebekah, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and my skin is smooth. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me. But his mother replied, then let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats for me. So Jacob went out and got the young goats for his mother. Rebekah took them and prepared a delicious meal, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's favorite clothes, which were there in the house, and gave them to her younger son, Jacob. She covered his arms and the smooth part of his neck with the skin of the young goats. Then she gave Jacob the delicious meal, including freshly baked bread. All right. So the plan is set in motion. Now Jacob did obviously had a reservation. That reservation was simply, pretty sure I'll get caught because I'm not as hairy as my brother. So she's like, hey, just do what I tell you to do. I got this covered. And literally covers him with some goat skin. So he's got some, goat hair essentially for Isaac to be able to touch if he chooses to touch his arm to see if it really is Esau, and then giving him Esau's clothes so he can now smell like Esau. They're really trying to trick this nearly or basically blind Esau at this point. Or I'm sorry, Isaac at this point. Esau's not blind. So Esau is out and he's going hunting. He's trying to find the wild game that his father Isaac really, really enjoys. Rebecca and Jacob are now scheming to essentially intercept this blessing. So we'll see what happens from there. Make sure I didn't miss anything in my notes here. So this is definitely Jacob living up to his name as a scoundrel or trickster. It's kind of what his name means. And he named him that because he was grabbing the heel of his of his older brother as he was coming out of the womb. So they gave him this name Jacob as a result of that. And let's see. So once again, it's fair to point out here, no one's concerned about God's will. They're all out for their own benefit. So we got a good chunk right here. We're going to read 18 through 27 and go through that and see what it is the story has for us now. All right, here we go. So Jacob took the food to his father. My father, he said. Yes, my son, Isaac answered. Who are you, Esau or Jacob? Jacob replied, it's Esau, your firstborn son. I think it's funny he says Esau, your firstborn son. Like he's really doubling down on this. I've done as you told me. Here is the wild game. Now sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing. Isaac asked, how did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God put it in my path, Jacob replied. Oof. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come closer so I can touch you and make sure that you really are Esau. So Jacob went closer to his father, and Isaac touched him. The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's, Isaac said. But he did not recognize Jacob, because Jacob's hands felt hairy, just like Esau's. So Isaac prepared to bless Jacob. But are you really my son Esau? He asked. Yes, I am, Jacob replied. Then Isaac said, now, my son, bring me the wild game. Let me eat it, and then I will give you my blessing. So Jacob took the food to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come a little closer and kiss me, my son. So Jacob went over and kissed him. And when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of the outdoors, which the Lord has blessed." Ooh, very nice, very nice. A lot there, but it's basically the whole interaction between Jacob and Isaac right there. And we see Jacob resorting to some pretty bold-faced lies. I mean, he's obviously there, fully committed to convince his father that he's his older brother, so he can get this blessing instead of the older brother, who I guess, by his perspective, he deserves that blessing. He deserves blessing of the firstborn because he bought it fair and square from his brother with a bowl of soup, right? Yep, smells awful, must be my stinky son. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So the outdoors does have a distinct smell. Whenever I go up to the mountains and that sort of thing, it's like stuck to my clothes. It's a very similar situation here, surely. Jacob doesn't really get outside, much other than to tend with like the animals that are, at the homestead, but to go out into the wilderness had that distinct scent to it. And that's what finally convinces him. So it's pretty interesting that Isaac wasn't a fool. Like, he's operating on the best that he can. He's confused. He knows something's off because it doesn't seem like Jacob is very good at impersonating his older brother's voice. And it could be as well that his father is just, his ears are still sharp. He's still like, yeah, this doesn't sound right. But finally, when all of his other senses, the touch and the smell, once those things are confirmed that it's, or thinks it confirms that it's, his older son, he's then convinced. But Jacob even starts bringing God into this when, Isaac is asking him, like, how did you come back so fast? How did you kill this so quickly? God put it in my path, right? So I just, let me find that part again. Let's see here. Harry, there we go. The Lord your God put it in my path. Just like talking about God with all this reverence and awe, it's like, hey, he deserves to be called the Lord your God. And keep in mind, he says your God, right? So this is going to be something that to keep in mind with Jacob. There's going to be a certain point in time in the story where he will finally refer to him as my God. But right now, he's referring to him as his father's God. Doesn't mean that he rejects God or anything like that, but it definitely shows that there's a lack of kind of a personal respect that he has for God. Also, why he's just kind of bringing God into this lackadaisically. To say this is God's will, it's God's permissive will, probably wouldn't be God's perfect will. God's perfect will would be these guys would trust God with the situation and do what he says, but they haven't even considered God in it. So they're just doing their own thing. God is working with the situation here to bring about his will. So yeah. Okay. So let's see here. Jacob is showing some moral deficiencies right now. But yeah, I think everyone is at this point. So Esau, Isaac, Jacob, Rebecca, they're all in their own program, right? They're all in their own program. Which is an easy thing to do. So let's see here. Do I have anything else for this? Yep. Jacob tricking. All right, let's talk about this blessing. So he's about to go through this blessing here. So we can listen to details of this, a few verses, and we can talk about it. All right. So this is Isaac blessing Jacob now, thinking he's blessing Esau. All right. So verse 28, from the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth, may God always give you abundant harvest of grain and bountiful new wine. May many nations become your servants, and may they bow down to you. May you be the master over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. All who curse you will be cursed, and all who bless you will be blessed. Well, that's pretty all-encompassing there. Blessing him with, essentially, having good resources, that God would give him, the things that he needs to survive and thrive. Also the authority, having a large nation, your authority over his other brother, right? So it's very interesting that in this, he didn't I'm sorry, Jacob. Isaac wasn't specific here. He didn't say, and you'd have authority over your brother. Jacob, it just says of authority over your brother. So, I mean, your brother's bowed down to you, right? So yeah. So he basically, and this is a sacred thing, right? This is not something that, he's just like wishing him well. This would be, it had a very strong cultural significance of like, this is, a done deal. This is a blessing. And it's been done, right? So he's passed this on to his son, and he passed it on to the right one, but not the one that he thought he was passing it to. So we'll see what happens with that, right? Mission accomplished for Jacob here and Rebecca. So let's see what the fallout is from there. We'll go 30 down a little bit here. Let's see. All right. We'll go through a few verses. We'll do 30 through 33. That should work out pretty well. All right, all right. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunt. Esau prepared a delicious meal and brought it to his father. Then he said, "Sit up, my father, and eat my wild game, so you can give me your blessing." But Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" Esau replied, "It's your son, your firstborn son Esau." Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said, "Then who just served me wild game? I have already eaten it, and I blessed him just before you came. And yes, that blessing must stand." Ooh, there we go. All right, so there's some comedic timing here. Where just as just as Jacob is about to leave his father, Esau shows up. So did Esau like see, Jacob there with his father? Is it just mean that he's back at the house? It says he has to prepare the meal, right? So did they like rub shoulders as Jacob was leaving his father's room and Esau's entering? I'm sure you could play with this in several different ways if you were to create like a visual, like stage play or something out of this. You could definitely escalate the drama with that, but it's just kind of interesting that, well, surely God must have, allowed Esau to catch something fairly quickly because it wasn't that long after he had left. So he was basically pretty eager to catch this wild game, bring it to his father, and give this blessing. And you see Isaac double down on like, listen, this blessing can't change. And that's actually a moment where I think we see Isaac kind of seeing God in all this, right? And respecting God in this. Surely if he was, wanting to double down on his own humanness, he could say, okay, fine. That first one didn't count. Here's the real blessing. But, he's done something sacred here. And out of respect for God and probably understanding at this point that God has essentially gotten his way from what was prophesied earlier to Rebecca, it could be very well that Esau might be thinking of that and going, listen, I'm not stepping on God's toes anymore in this situation, right? This is done, and it's not what he wanted. But yeah, so let's see what Esau does next here. He's just had his blessing stolen from him, so to speak. So let's see how he takes it. Surely he'll be fine, right? Let's see this. All right, let's 34 through 38, something like that. That's probably what we'll do. Let's go ahead and jump to this. Make it happen. All right. When Esau heard his father's words, he let out a loud and bitter cry. All right, so not well. "Oh, my father, what about me? Bless me too," he begged. But Isaac said, "Your brother was here, and he tricked me. He has taken away your blessing." Esau exclaimed, "No wonder his name is Jacob, for now he has cheated me twice. First, he took my rights as the firstborn, and now he has stolen my blessing. Oh, haven't you saved even one blessing for me?" Isaac said to Esau, "I have made Jacob your master and have declared that all his brothers will be his servants. I have guaranteed him an abundance of grain and wine. What is left for me to give to you, my son?" Take a pause there for a second. Oh man, so it's kind of sad, but it's like, did Esau shown contempt for his own birthright? Esau is, very much doubled down on living his life his way, pursuing pleasures. Is not making a lot of great decisions. But here he is, like begging and pleading with his father just for a single blessing. Like he was probably thinking about this blessing for a long time. Maybe it wasn't a long time. Maybe it was just the moment his father said, "I'm going to give you a blessing," and that whole time went out there to hunt, got his stuff. He's just so excited. Clearly, he really, really, really wanted this. And now it's, obviously his expectations have been, changed or not met, right? So let's see here. Grateful my brother isn't like that, right? Yeah, it's probably not a good brother to have. Once again, Esau isn't thinking about anything other than himself also in this moment. So that's something to consider. And keep this in mind. So when Isaac was blessing Jacob, thinking he was blessing his oldest son Esau, he was giving him everything, right? He didn't save anything for Jacob, his second born son. So it really kind of shows a dynamic in this family of like some real, toxic drama of like, he was just going to give everything to Esau, saving nothing for Jacob. Probably didn't have Jacob in mind at all for any blessing whatsoever. That almost shows a level of contempt for his second born son out of his favoritism for his firstborn son. And what's funny about this is that they're twins. Like, this is not like firstborn by a couple years or anything like that. They came out at basically the same time, just one right before the other. So it's just really, really interesting. Also, deeply human. You read stuff like this, it's not it's not flattering, right? So this is one of the things that gets brought up a lot. I'll bring it up a lot in the Bible too. It's not a very flattering text, for people. Like, some people say, well, they were just making this stuff up. It was just meant to be a good story about themselves, right? This would be the Israelites writing about themselves and how great their ancestors were. And typically when you read older stories like mythologies, things like that, typically people try to like say, hey, my ancestors were like really cool. Like the Spartans we took a lot of pride in saying, hey, we are the descendants of Hercules, right? And he was awesome. You could do no wrong. So like they want to take pride in these things. Well, if you were going to make up a story about how great your ancestors were, this isn't a very good way of doing it. It's kind of making them all look really, really bad here. So it's very humiliating, but yeah, once again, it seems very human, very real in that way, because people are very messy in general. So yeah, Isaac wasn't going to save a single blessing for Jacob, and that's basically what he has to double down on telling Esau here. So let's go a little bit further here, see what happens next, because let's see if Esau's willing to just let it go, let bygones be bygones, right? We'll see. Maybe not, right? Let's go ahead and cover what happens next. All right. Esau pleaded, but do you have only one blessing? Oh, my father, bless me too. Then Esau broke down and wept. Now he's crying for his father, by the way. Finally, his father Isaac said to him, you will live away from the riches of the earth and away from the dew of the heaven above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you decide to break free, you will shake his yoke from your neck. Okay. Let's cover that blessing here real quick. Not much of a blessing. I mean, this is basically him just telling Esau, listen, you're going to have hard times. You're going to have to do a lot of fighting, and, you're going to make it in this life, but it's not going to be easy. And you're going to be, under the authority of your brother, but not forever. When you're ready to essentially have your own independence or not be under his control, then you'll be able to establish that for yourself. So that's kind of, light at the end of the tunnel. That's kind of a blessing at the end there. So that's the best that he can give, the best he can conjure up. And it's true. Esau's descendants aren't under the authority of the Israelites. They have their own established, country and kingdom and people group that isn't under the authority of the Israelites. So they, in that way, this definitely comes true for them. So, let's go ahead and go a little bit further here. So we've got, I think only 6 more verses. Let's see. Do we want to cover all those? Let's see. Okay. The next part I have on my notes says Esau's anger. So let's see what that looks like. Okay. Yeah, Esau takes this. From that time on, Esau hated Jacob because their father had given Jacob the blessing, and Esau began to scheme. I will soon be mourning my father's death. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But Rebekah heard about Esau's plans. So she sent for Jacob and told him, listen, Esau is consoling himself by plotting to kill you. So listen carefully, my son. Get ready and flee to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay there with him until your brother cools off. When he calms down and forgets what you have done to him, I will send for you to come back. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I would rather die than see Jacob marry one of them. Okay, so a little bit right here, but basically Esau is consoling himself with revenge, which is basically the point of revenge. If you really think about it, the only point of revenge isn't justice. It's not the greater good or anything like that. It's not about getting even. That's just what people tell themselves. It's about consoling yourself. It's about trying to deal with your own grief, and it's a toxic and, poisonous way to deal with that. So this is, we see this theme before. We see stuff with Cain and Abel, brothers that have this, well, wasn't both of them. It was really just Cain who had the problem. So we see this before, so we can see where this will go. Rebekah overhears this. So we don't really know how much time that they still were. I don't know if they're living in one household or at least, in the same, group of houses in a certain area, right? I mean, these aren't little kids at this point; they're adults. But for whatever the given amount of time was, it could have been days, weeks, a year or two, maybe. We're not really sure, but yeah. So it looks like at some point in time, she figures out this plot, perhaps overheard him. It's like, once again, we don't really get the layup or setup of where they're living and how that kind of looks. But the main thing is that she's here now going to try and save her son. Jacob is her favorite after all. And the way she's going to do that is by sending him over to her brother Laban. But she doesn't have the authority to just send her son away. She would need Isaac's permission to do that. So that's why it veers off very quickly right at the end there, where she goes to Isaac and says, I'm tired of all these Hittite women. Jacob shouldn't marry one of them. So this is her way of convincing Isaac to send Jacob, very similarly how he basically got a wife from, the family over there, to send Jacob over there to find a wife that would be in the family, right? So it would be, someone who might be related to her brother, that sort of thing. So that's what she's going to try and do here. Now, the sad thing is that's kind of the end of this chapter. That is literally the end of this chapter. So they all basically have their own agendas, including Rebekah. And this is, for Rebekah's part in all of this, something to know down the road. This is going to be the last time she sees Jacob. She thinks that she's going to be able to send for Jacob and she'll see him again one day. She won't. So this will, she doesn't realize it. But you might say that maybe this is the price for her manipulation in all of this. But everyone seems to kind of get their own in that regard. So, they all kind of deal with some trials and tribulations. Esau, Isaac are getting theirs up front. They're the ones who were put out first. Rebekah is going to essentially, die before Jacob winds up coming back home. Not to reveal too much. And, Jacob, we'll have to see if, things go, perfectly well for him where he goes. So the next chapter will open up with that and going over to, Jacob's adventures, essentially. And we'll basically be talking a lot about Jacob for a few chapters after that. So with that, unless you guys have any comments or anything that you want to go over, let me see here. Where's that thing? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so as you guys can see, God's perfect will and God's permissive will, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about when we think about these stories. And really, all the stories in the Bible, it almost seems like the majority of what we read is God's permissive will, is the things that are God's allowing to happen, and yet still navigating the circumstances to bring about his ultimate will in some way or another. So interesting thing to think about when we're reading these stories. And with that, yeah, let's go ahead. We'll go to the front of the ship. We will, while we are on our way back to Earth, we'll talk about some space news, some exciting stuff, related some things from last time. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. And with that, let's see. Let's go ahead. Wilson, we'll turn this thing around. I'll see you guys back up front. All right. Yeah. Let's get, here we go. Before we get into the news, let me go ahead and get us going back home. That should do it right there. Okay, well with that, let me go ahead and set up here. So last time we talked about the Europa Clipper. So the Europa Clipper, it was launched on October 14th. There we go. It was launched on October 14th, so just not too long ago, about a week ago, and yeah, it was successful. It's in outer space, so we can actually use the eyes of the solar system to check it out. Let's see here. Get that going here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to check on, we probably should have checked on if we got back to Earth or not, but anyways, we'll be fine. So what we got right here is we got the Europa Clipper. Let me go ahead and kind of show you this bad boy right here. So once again, you go to the eyes of the solar system on your usual browser, and you can find this. And what's really cool about this, we zoom out right here, we can see how far it is. So that's the moon, by the way. That's Earth, obviously. We got some things floating around here. And then we have this guy, and it's pretty interesting because we've got the distance it has to travel. Here, let me show you guys this. Where it is going. It is going all the way to Jupiter here, and more specifically, let's find it. Let's find Europa. There it is. This is where it is going. And if you guys remember, why it's going here is because there is a few miles thick, like 15-20 miles of ice crust around this little water world here. And then on the inside, we can tell by basically, shooting some lasers at it and seeing the density of it. The inside seems to have a rock core, yet there are streams, like little geysers that come out of here, that are basically showing that there's a liquid ocean underneath the icy surface. And that's kind of where, these cracks and stuff will, they'll come out of. And that basically means you have an ocean bed that is a rock ocean bed. You have a liquid ocean inside, meaning that life could potentially exist in here. And so whether it's, microorganisms, or perhaps there's literally space whales on Europa, we won't really know. The Europa Clipper is going to go around this thing a few times, pass a few laps, going to try and collect samples from some of the sprays of ice coming out that came from that liquid ocean. Perhaps there'll be some kind of space algae or something like that. So it'll be really interesting to see if humans can find life outside of Earth in our solar system here. Let's go ahead and go back to the Clipper. Let's see, we'll go to Earth. And this is actually fairly accurate on where this thing is. It's about, I want to say, what's the distance here? Let's play with this. Let's play with this tool right here. Europa Clipper to, here we go. Okay, 5.16 million miles. So that's a long distance, right? But the distance it's gonna have to cover is something like 1.6 billion in order to get to Europa. And the reason for that is because, as you can see, it's not traveling in a straight line straight to Europa. All these are moving bodies, right? So this is pretty cool to kind of see what NASA has been able to figure out. And they've been working with SpaceX and all that stuff. That's actually who got them to get it launched out here into space. Let's see here. So yeah, so basically we're going to be covering this on this show. We'll be tracking it, seeing its progress, how it makes its way all the way to Europa over here, but it'll be interesting the path that it has to travel. How do you launch something to land on an object out there like that? It takes a lot of math, a lot of hard work. So yeah, I don't know. This is probably one of the most interesting things, aside from like sending rovers to Mars and that sort of thing. The potential that they could find life doing this would be pretty cool. You know, and it's like, you know, from the Christian perspective, there's not really an issue if life is found on other planets. There might be an issue with finding, you know, intelligent life on other planets, excluding Wilson. Wilson's just a robot. But, you know, anything that would be like a human being, right, might be interesting to fit into the Christian narrative with that. But, you know, as far as like, you know, microorganisms or like space whales or space deer out there somewhere, things like that, probably wouldn't be that big of an issue. But it's very interesting. Hopefully they do find something cool and it is a successful journey. So let's go back. Let's see. I think we got this. We are back at Earth. Perfect, which I can obviously see here. So with that, let me make sure. I can't see your guys' comments. Here we go. Let's see. Lisa, perfect versus permissive. Never thought about it in those terms, but makes so much sense. Yeah, it kind of helps. Like when we talk about those terms, helps to understand the story, the nature of God, and what's going on, right? And Dan Yoder, birthright and blessing, taken over a bowl of soup. Yep, taken for just simply a bowl of soup there. Yeah, not Esau's never a bright guy. He's that kind of guy. He's just living in the moment, right? He just wants what he wants, and just kind of goes from there. So let's see. I think that's pretty much everything on our end. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. We're slowly growing. So once again, if you like the show, you know, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. But the biggest thing is sharing it with others. We're still have a goal to get 1 billion human beings subscribed to the Silverwind. I don't know how many aliens are subscribed to the Silverwind. Wilson, you're subscribed to the Silverwind, right? No? Wilson, you gotta subscribe to the Silverwind. Anyways, he thinks since he's here, he doesn't have to subscribe to it. We'll work on that. So anyways, with that, we'll hit our lovely little outro. And yeah, love doing this with you guys. And I will we'll do this countercultural storytelling show next week, Wednesday night at 5 o'clock Pacific. So with that, I will catch you guys later. Let's hit that outro, Wilson, right now. See you guys next time.
Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Thanks everyone who joined the live stream. All the artists in the description, please check them out. To every brave subscriber, thank you. You keep us flying.
Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my